What's up, sports fans? This is the Lucas Ross Sports Channel. We continue here with my 2024 college football schedule preview and projected record series. The Iowa State Cyclones are up next before we preview their schedule for 2024 and give them an early projected record based on how tough their schedule is. Let's take a look back at what Iowa State did in 2023. Here are my projections and predictions last year for Iowa State. My projection had them at 4-8, and then my prediction for this team was 6-6. So I did have a weight difference there with my projection and predictions last year. But Iowa State went 7-5 in 2023 in the regular season. But if you count their bowl game loss at the end of the year, this team finished with an overall record at 7-6. So a pretty decent year for Iowa State last year. My projection wasn't really that high for this team just because of the schedule and based off of where they were in 2022, but my prediction for them was better. I did have them at least going to a bowl game, and that's exactly what they did. And here was that schedule last year for Iowa State. You look at their non-conference schedule. They played Northern Iowa, played Iowa here, of course, at home. They play Iowa every year out of the Big Ten, and then of course played on the road here at Ohio here out of the MAC. So they didn't really have a tough non-conference schedule, but they did lose 2 non-conference games with Iowa and of course Ohio here on the road. And then you look at their Big 12 schedule. They lost to Oklahoma here on the road back on September the 30th, lost to Kansas here at home on November 4th, and then of course lost to Texas here, in the Big 12 as well here at home. So they lost like 3 games last year in the Big 12, but they lost 2 games in the non-conference, and that ended up being a 7-5 record for them. So that's the look at the schedule from last year in 2023. Let's now look ahead to 2024. Here is the schedule for Iowa State heading into the upcoming season. Before we go game by game, let's take a look at who they will play in the non-conference this upcoming season. So this is their non-conference schedule. They will play North Dakota, an FCS team, and then they'll play Iowa here on the road. Of course, they play Iowa every year. That's a rivalry game that you never know what can happen. And this time they will play them on the road. They played them at home last year, and it will be kind of like a revenge game for the Cyclones as well. And then they play Arkansas State here in the non-conference as well. So not a very tough non-conference schedule. It's kind of similar to last year's non-conference schedule, but they will of course play Iowa here on the road, which makes it a little bit of a tough non-conference schedule, but that's definitely a very winnable game just because it's a rivalry game. You never know what can happen. So that's the non-conference schedule for 2024. Let's go back to the schedule now here for 2024 and go game by game now. So again, they will kick things off with North Dakota here on August 31st, and then after that they go on the road to face Iowa here on September the 7th, and then they get a bye week here rather early here in the month of September. It comes at the second weekend of the month of September. They come out of the bye week. They do play Arkansas State here on September the 21st. Then they open up Big 12 play here on the road at Houston on September the 28th. Then it's at home here in the month of October. As they get to the month of October, they'll play Baylor here at home on October the 5th, and then they go on the road to face West Virginia here on October the 12th. Then it's back at home here against UCF on October the 19th. They get their second bye week here at the last weekend of the month of October. They come out of the bye week. They'll play Texas Tech here at home on November 2nd. And then they go on the road to face Kansas here on November 9th. And then it's back at home here against Cincinnati on November 16th. Then it's on the road here at Utah on November 23rd. And then it's back at home here and then close things out with Kansas State here on November 30th in the last weekend of the regular season. So that's the schedule for Iowa State in 2024. It's a little bit of a tough schedule. You do got some tough road games with West Virginia, Utah, Kansas. I mean, those are some tough road games there. And then you got Iowa here in the non-conference, which also makes it a very tough schedule. But I think there's definitely a lot of very winnable games here for the Cyclones when it comes to the Big 12. So let's not get a projection here based on this schedule for Iowa State. And like I said, this is not my official prediction. This is simply a projection based on how tough the schedule is. And this is the scale I use here for my projections. If it's a 1% game, we count those as automatic losses here. These projections, 20% games in the orange, are going to be games where Iowa State will be about a couple touchdowns of underdogs. 40% games here in the yellow, they're going to be a heavy underdog game by about a touchdown and also about a slight underdog as well here in the yellow. And then 50-50 games will, of course, stay in the white. Games I think can go either way. 60% games in the purple are going to be games where Iowa State will be favored by at least a touchdown. And then the 80% games games here in the blue, they're going to be favored by a couple touchdowns. And then the 99% games here in the green, they're going to be counted as automatic wins here when we do these projections. So we'll start with the 99% games here in the green for Iowa State in this projection, the easy wins and also the automatic wins here for 2024. And I think you got a couple of them on here for Iowa State, North Dakota, and Arkansas State. I think the Cyclones will be favored by at least by more than 3 touchdowns in both of these games. And they should go out there and take care of business in both of these games. North Dakota and Arkansas State are, Arkansas State's sometimes a pretty good, Sun Belt team, but you got North Dakota, who's an FCS team. They're not a bad FCS team, but Iowa State should definitely be overall the better team in both of these games, and they should overall go out there and take care of business in both of these non-conference games. So we count these 2 games as automatic wins. They're not guaranteed wins, but they're counted as automatic wins, like I just mentioned, when we do these projections. I don't have any blue games on here for Iowa State just because the Big 12, there's not any other guaranteed wins, and there's not really any other slight wins on here when it comes to the Big 12 Conference. So let's move on to the purple games now for Iowa State, the games that they'll be favored by at least a touchdown. And I got about 3 of them on here. It's Baylor, UCF, and Cincinnati. I think Iowa State will be favored by at least a touchdown in all 3 of these games. The reason why they're favored in all 3 of these games in the purple is just because they're playing here at home. Baylor, UCF, and Cincinnati, I think UCF was coming off a pretty good season last year, but they were a pretty average team. And like I said, the reason why this game is in the purple against UCF is because Iowa State is playing at home. Baylor and Cincinnati are 2 teams that I have a lot of question marks for. We don't know how good those 2 teams are going to be, but again, all 3 of these games that you're seeing in the purple, the reason why they're in the purple is just because they're playing here at home, and I think Iowa State is definitely the more better team compared to all 3 of these teams as well. So I think Iowa State will be favored in all 3 of these games, at least in the purple. And then when you look at the rest of the schedule, there's not really any other games on here that I don't really see Iowa State being an underdog in. The rest of the games on here are pretty much 50-50 games here for the Cyclones. I mean, like I said, when it comes to the Big 12, there's a lot of very winnable games, and there's just a lot of games where you can't really put a Big 12 team as an underdog in some of these games, is just because the Big 12 is going to be very competitive. So all these games that you're seeing here in the white, Iowa on the road, Houston on the road, West Virginia on the road, Texas Tech at home, Kansas on the road, Utah on the road, and then Kansas State here at home. These are all 50-50 games here for Iowa State. I think they can all go either way. I know that Utah game, they should be probably an underdog in that game just because it's on the road. Same thing with West Virginia, but I think Iowa State has a chance to be a pretty competitive team. I think I've said this before, that Iowa State has a chance to be very competitive. They were very competitive last year in a lot of their games. I think they'll have a chance to do that again this year. But like I said, anything can happen in the Big 12. A lot of these teams are going to beat up on each other, and that's what Iowa State is going to do here as well. So, and you look at that non-conference game against Iowa, that's a game that probably, Iowa State should be an underdog in, but I think that's a rivalry game. You never know what can happen and everything, so again, Iowa State's got a lot of 50-50 games on here, so let's now get a projected record here based on this schedule for Iowa State in 2024. And again, not my official prediction. This is simply a projection based on how tough the schedule is. So we count a couple of those green games as automatic wins, and then you average out all 3 of these purple games here at least 60%, and then you average out all the 50-50 games here at 50%. And the overall projected record for Iowa State in 2024 is 7-5 here. So a better projection compared to last year. I had them at 4-8 last year in 2023, my projection, but this year I have them at 7-5. And like I said, the Big 12 is going to be so competitive, and it's just going to be a lot of winnable games here on the schedules for all the Big 12 teams. And it's really hard to project these Big 12 schedules for this conference because it's just going to be a very competitive conference. It's going to be kind of hard to tell how good each team is going to be, and also it's going to be kind of hard to tell who's going to be an underdog and who's going to be a favorite in one of these games. So I think Iowa State does have a lot of 50-50 games, and that's the reason why the projection came out to be at 7-5. But again, a lot of very winnable games on here for Iowa State. They do have some tough road games on here, but all these road games and also these 50-50 games, they're all pretty much winnable games. And those purple games, they're not counted as wins. They're like trap games here for Iowa State, and that's just the reason why the Big 12 is so hard to project, and also all these Big 12 schedules are hard to project as well. So 7-5 projection here for Iowa State for 2024. I think best case scenario would definitely have to be 8-4, and then maybe 6-6 or maybe 5-7 be worst case scenario. So 7-5 projection here for Iowa State. Give me your thoughts on Iowa State down in the comments below. What do you think their projected record is for 2024? Thanks for watching this video, and stay tuned here for more sports content videos on my Lucas Ross Sports Channel.